A young girl slips her little hand into her mom's, intertwining their fingers. It's a typical weekend outing. But they're not headed to the playground, or to basketball practice, or out on errands. No, they're entering an ashram in upstate New York. It's a sacred place, secluded and charged with energy for tranquility and transformation.
My mom taught me how to meditate as a kid. I was introduced to spiritual principles like it was just a normal thing.
When this girl became a teenager and felt herself struggling with anxiety, she would return to her mom's meditation.
I sat deep in that meditation and I would feel presence of energy coming through me at a really young age.
The Hindu mantra Soham comes from the Sanskrit for I am that. It's about being one with the universe.
It really brought me a lot of peace at the time.
Until it didn't.
I remember walking through the clubs and being like, good knows good. You're good. Like thinking that, and meaning it, like feeling like, oh, I can feel your energy. Yeah. But like, who was I really feeling when I was high, right? So.
Gabby Bernstein would go on to get sober, uncover trauma, and just when she thought she had it all figured out, she'd hit an even bigger rock bottom. How she survived came to inspire a generation, and the practices she's passing down to her own child today on the Gratitudeology Podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
What's your road trip playlist? Party in the USA?
Jumped in the cab, here I am for the first time.
Crazy in Love?
Yes. So crazy.
For my husband and me, it's
You may be doing all you can to create freedom, connect to flow, and release your fear-based habits. But it's likely that the moment you feel some sense of relief, you're blindsided by the shadow of fear that dwells below the surface.
That's Gabby, reading her New York Times bestseller, The Universe Has Your Back. After we listened to all 5 hours of it in one trip, I immediately binged every other book from her collection. You could say I'm a bit of a fangirl. So when I found myself in her lush living room, shoes off, along with my crew, I knew I had to make the most of the 30 minutes we'd have together for this podcast interview. No time to savor the chamomile tea she just poured for me. So on this podcast, I typically bring people through their own story, and we kind of get to that moment where the switch flipped and you started seeing life through a lens of gratitude. So I understand that in your youth, kind of two things were true. There was trauma, and also you were starting to navigate your psychic experience.
Yes. So I was not aware of the trauma until my late mid-30s. So I did experience trauma as a child, but I didn't know. So I was living in this very anxious, depressed, freaked out way, but also really aware of the spiritual realm. So that veil was still there. Like I couldn't completely lift the veil, but it was punctured. I could see that there was a presence beyond my physical sight. But I kind of turned my back on that and went in the other direction.
Right.
As a trauma response that I wasn't even aware of.
I'm going to pause here. Gabby has written extensively about her recovered memory of childhood abuse in her book, Happy Days. So we didn't spend a lot of time on the topic. For some context, Here's some of what she said about the impact of it on the Tamron Hall show.
Wow.
The memory really was, as difficult as it was a relief because, Tam, it made me recognize and understand and honor why I had been addicted in the first place.
So let's talk about that time.
Yeah.
I can picture it in my mind's eye because I was there in that exact same experience in New York City.
Yeah, we had the same time, we had the same party scene. We were definitely doing coke at Bungalow.
100%. We sure were.
Together.
Bungalow, as in Bungalow 8, as in
Have you been to Bungalow 8 yet?
No, but I hear it's a completely pretentious, members-only, tiny, crowded club that you need a key to get into.
I have a key.
When are we going?
It was George Clooney. It was this one. It was like Lindsay Lohan when she was on fire.
That's right, Lilo, Gabby Bernstein, and me. None of us knew each other, but we were all at the same clubs at the same time. And eventually, at some point, the party stopped being fun.
And I really just remember having it be very dark and thinking like, everybody does this, right? You know, doesn't everybody do cocaine? Doesn't everybody? That was the time when cocaine was the party drug. And doesn't everybody just like go out on a Sunday? And it was just sort of this normal thing that I had gotten so accustomed to. And for me, when I hit that final bottom, it was when I started to look at my life and realize I was no longer nice. Because I always prided myself in being a nice person. And here I was like barking at people at the, somebody waiting my table, or like yelling at my brother, or I couldn't remember where I parked my car. Couldn't remember the name of my intern that had been working for me for like 2 years.
Many people in recovery will pinpoint a moment that changed their trajectory. When Gabby describes her path, I notice it's more of a series of serendipitous events. In other words, despite feeling, as she says, spiritually bankrupt, that intuition she had felt early in her life, that she had cultivated from such a young age, was still there.
And I remember my mom had gone to this psychic, and I had recorded the psychic reading, and she had said, you will either get sober and make a major impact on the world, or stay using and probably not survive. And I remember hearing that, get sober, and just listening to that over and over. And it stuck with me. And it was around that time that I started really contemplating what a sober life would look like.
What happened next? Well, you could call it coincidence, or you could call it fate.
I was trying to get clean. I had contacted Hazelton and was like, can I get in here? And they're like, that'll be $6,000 a month out of pocket. I didn't have that then. And so they said, but there's a therapist here that would be great. He just left and he's going to be on his own. I contacted this guy. His name is Dr. Rick Barnett. Turns out that his office is directly across the street from my office. And I was like, it's convenient. Let's go. And I get on the phone with him and he's like, I'm only going to be here for another 2 months, but for whatever reason, I think I should work with you. I was like, okay. So I showed up. He helped me recognize my alcoholism. I didn't think I had a drinking problem because I was really just addicted to cocaine. And he said, well, what do you do when you drink? And I said, I do cocaine. He said, you have a drinking problem. That's unmanageable. It was really around that time that he helped me see that there was possibility and that there was a program where I could end up. And I found my way to that. I found my way there. I found my way into the fellowship, into the support system that we need when we're early days. And there was a lot of young people getting sober at that time. I mean, you were there.
When Gabby starts telling how she felt in her program, I had to stop and double check that I wasn't back telling my own story. That's how similar it was. Because for all the ways New York City can chew you up and spit you back out, even though it can be a dog-eat-dog rat race, there's community in recovery here.
It was just such a blessing. And I remember going into the meetings and being like, oh my God, there's a bouncer from the club. And like that guy and I used to party together. It was just like my people were there.
So Gabby gets sober. So something people might not know about the early days of recovery is that you end up with a lot of free time on your hands. For me, I got fit. I started doing a gratitude practice, but I couldn't help but wonder, how did Gabby fill her newfound time?
I've heard you say before, Gabby, that all the girls who used to want to be Carrie Bradshaw now want to be Wayne Dyer. Is this kind of how you found personal development and spirituality?
You know, I found it through my mother originally, and I returned to it when I got clean. And I returned to Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and Shakti Gawain and Marianne Williamson and A Course in Miracles. And they'd all been part of my life before getting sober and then became my teachers and ultimately my friends, my publishers, and my mentors. And so it was really seeing the generations that had come before me and what they had created and knowing, okay, I'm supposed to do that too. And I'm supposed to do that for my generation. That I knew really young.
That knowing
25.
is incredible.
Now that Gabby had brought up Louise Hay, the motivational speaker who died in 2017 at the age of 90, I need to ask her about something that's been living rent-free in my head since listening to her on the Skinny Confidential Him and Her podcast. Here's a little bit of it.
Welcome back to the Skinny Confidential Him and Her show.
We're going to hop right into it. So, and you see my hands go up like this. So, okay. So Louise, are you open to this? Is this cool? Okay. So Louise is guide, a teacher, a messenger through me in many, many ways. And when I'm speaking, I allow her to come through. Wayne Dyer too. They were both my teachers and they come so easily and so fast. I also start speaking really fast when I start channeling.
Yeah. I mean, you're actually, do you consider yourself psychic and intuitive?
A medium. Yeah.
A medium.
Yeah.
So far, I've seen so much of myself in Gabby, but a medium? I am not. I mean, one time I tried a Ouija board at a sleepover, and instead of giving me the name of the boy I had a crush on, it gave me a bunch of nonsense. So in all seriousness, though, before Hasbro owned the trademark on Ouija, these boards contributed to the popularity of mediumship in the 19th century when they were used for entertainment. In fact, precursors can be traced all the way back to China around 1100 AD. And somewhere in between all of that was one of the most famous people who heard voices and saw visions, Joan of Arc, who Gabby would quote next.
And she said, "I am not afraid. I was born to do this."
The quote's direct translation from French is, "It was for this that I was born," but the popularized version sounds better. Either way, what matters is how much it resonates with Gabby.
That's my truth. I was brought up in a spiritual home. It was what I was here to do. It's just my soul chose this.
Gabby followed that calling to become a spiritual leader and best-selling author. In fact, the New York Times called her a new role model. And then the calling got even stronger. Any PR gal, former or current, will tell you that the majority of our work is done in New York or LA. But there are 3 little digits you always hope to see pop up on your phone. 312. That's right, Chicago, for a very particular reason. And Gabby knew her call would come.
Gabby Bernstein.
It was actually one of Oprah's producers who called, but you get the idea.
So I think that was something I'd been manifesting for a really long time and holding a vision of her on my vision board and just breathing into the feeling of what it was like to be on Oprah. And then by the time I got this phone call from Chicago and they're like, "Hey, this is the producers at Harpo." And I was like, I've been waiting for this call. Like I just knew at that point. And I knew it shouldn't have come a day sooner and it came at the perfect time. And it was a relationship that continues to allow me to be on her stage or be in her collective of 100 entrepreneurs. And these relationships and touch points happen at a young age for me because I think that my career is a lifelong career and it needed to have a bigger impact early on to start to accelerate the conversation.
Gabby didn't just accelerate the wellness conversation for our generation in the West, she gave it rocket fuel. She reaches millions of listeners, readers, and audience members, sharing meditation, manifestation methods, and motivation. I know what you're thinking. She's got it all figured out. Nothing can knock her down, right? It's what I thought when I discovered, then devoured her work. Hell, it's even what I thought about myself when I started teaching, that my armor should have no chinks. I'm supposed to be the coach. It's supposed to be all figured out. And if that's what you thought, you'd be wrong. Very, very wrong.
And when you had your son, things got dark. So can you walk us through that?
Mm-hmm. That experience was a journey to get to have him, to conceive him. But then I had a great pregnancy, great month or two after the pregnancy. And then I started having extreme anxiety and insomnia. And it took me several months before I could accept a diagnosis because I was trying to wellness my way out of it. I was trying to ashwagandha and acupuncture and mediums, and that I had every resource under the sun, about like Deepak on speed dial, right? So like I could have contacted anyone, any doctor. I had the resources financially, but I was leaning into the wrong direction, frankly, because when you're having a biochemical condition, such as postpartum depression, no amount of ashwagandha is going to help you.
Right.
And so finally I hit a big bottom, hit a huge bottom where I hadn't slept for 40 days. I was supposed to give a talk. I didn't show up that morning. I said, I can't make it. It was the first time in nearly 20 years that I didn't give a talk, didn't show up.
Let that sink in. 40 days without sleep. Your job is to speak, to show up, and you just can't.
And that was my bottom. So I remember my therapist got on the phone. She's like, we need to intervene here and you need to see a psychiatrist. And so I was guided to a psychiatrist that day, sat down in her office. Within 5 minutes, she diagnosed me with postpartum depression and anxiety, at which point I got on psychiatric medication, which saved my life, in many ways gave me life. I didn't realize I'd been living my whole life with an unresolved anxiety disorder. And it also just gave me such a safe baseline to do extremely genuine trauma work and go deep into that work. So I'm not putting down the wellness industry. I'm just saying, I'm just putting out a warning. It can't be all or nothing.
Right.
The relationship between mood disorders and substance abuse disorder is complicated. Yes, people with mood disorders are more likely to develop addictions. And also people who have addictions are at a higher risk of developing mood disorders. Plus, people with addiction are more likely to have had traumatic experiences. Getting the proper treatment for your own situation is so important. And believe me, I know how easy it is to get stuck. So I want to know how Gabby suggests people break that cycle.
I think that it's a journey. It's a slow burn. And when you experience trauma, you have a lot of forms of protection that come up to protect you from the impermissible. And for me, it was like so many protector parts of me, even dissociation, right? It was like so checked out. Cocaine, alcoholism, relationships, all the ways that I would try to push it down. And you don't really want to rip off those Band-Aids too quickly because it'll be too extreme for you. You literally might go mad because it's so terrifying to face into the trauma and into the truth. And so if you're aware of it, but you're pushing it down, okay, just titrate in slowly and come back out. And a little bit in with a therapy session, come back out. A little bit in with a 12-step meeting, a little bit in listening to a podcast like this, and then in and out. Because you don't want to dive in.
Right.
You just blow yourself out. So it's a slow and steady process. It requires therapeutic support, sometimes psychiatric support, sometimes 12-step support, or going to a treatment center.
For me, that process always includes gratitude. Always. It's not just about being grateful for the things in your life that are already good, but also finding gratitude for the challenges. And I know that can be hard, like really, really hard.
What would your advice be to somebody who is going through a season of their life where it feels so impossible to connect with gratitude? It feels like they're just stuck in fear, anger, resentment, and they can't get there.
Well, I love that Amma quote. When an eggshell is cracked from the outside, it's broken, but when it's cracked from the inside, it's reborn. And I think that that's just the answer. It's if you're having an experience where you're hitting your knees, where you're saying to yourself, I can't go on like this, or there has to be a better way, then that's your opening. And so even if you're at your darkest moment, but you have the willingness to open your heart to the possibility that there could be more, then you've already opened the door and everything is possible.
You've already opened the door. Now I want to know how she welcomes in gratitude.
Yeah, I think that when we appreciate what we do have, we create more of what we want. So for me, I am often noticing when I'm in a storyline that's not so happy or not so great or not so appreciative, and I will redirect those stories consciously. I'll say, oh, this is such a hard thing to do. And then I'll say, oh, I have the privilege of being able to figure this out, or whatever it might be. And reaching into an appreciation for what is rather than focusing on what isn't. And so that is my daily practice. My brain has been reprogrammed to lean into the possibility and solution seeking and appreciation. It's just repetition of new behavior. You create new neural pathways. That's it. Right. Literally, my brain default is solution. So of course I have moments where I'm like pulled back into an old story of I can't get help or I can't do this, but I can come back fast.
Right. It's how fast.
That's a practice.
That's a practice.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about Gabby Bernstein as a child in those ashrams with her mom. Now, of course, she's the mom. And I want to know what it's like to be her son, learning spirituality and gratitude from her.
We talk about angels every night, and we talk to the angels, and I pray for the angels to surround him. So he's had that from birth. I teach him to express his feelings. I give him space to talk about his feelings and to give voice to his feelings. I talk about my feelings to him. I speak to him with communication rather than reprimanding. So I practice something called positive discipline, which might look like no discipline, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's communication. And so it's expressing feelings and giving him the opportunity to speak for what is going on for him, rather than judging him or yelling at him. Why'd you do that? Saying, what are you feeling right now that made you want to do that? And it doesn't always land, but it's a way of communicating that is far different than shaming and blaming. And so giving him a safe bond is the greatest thing I can do for him, to feel safe, to feel respected, to feel connected. And if he has that, then he can do anything in life. The gratitude piece is hard. My kid's growing up with a tremendous amount of privilege. He doesn't really know. Your kid has what they have, right? So it's a little bit, I don't know if it's easy for me to express, but we say what we're grateful for at meals. We talk about the abundance that is in our life, but it is still tricky because they know what they experience. And so if he has a lot of nice experiences in his life, or he's able to travel around the world with us, or have whatever he needs, truly, it's not that I wouldn't want that for him, but I also want to be able to instill appreciation and gratitude as well. So that's something I'm working on.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time, my husband and I, because I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm a horseback rider. Those people my friends that came from privilege turned out to be some of the most ill-equipped adults to deal with emotion, with gratitude, with really understanding what matters.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult.
Yeah.
So I want to end here, because this is what I think probably what I identify with most about you. The balance between hustle culture Gabby, because you are so ambitious, you are so bright and smart and successful, and spiritual Gabby. And I'm wondering, is that a daily, are those two up against each other every day, or have you taught your internal to kind of integrate those two parts of yourself?
What a nice question. I think that in my early part of my career, it might have been not that they were up against each other, but that I would burn out and then spiritually align, and burn out and then spiritually align. And that dance didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And when I experienced the memories and then going into the PTSD and the postpartum, I had to start to find a new way of living and reprogram my patterns, my brain, my perception of myself. So today I have a lot on my plate, a million balls in the air, a team that I'm trying to manage and grow. And for instance, today my body's telling me like, work on your voice, don't, because I talk just so much. And so I can have so my body's like, pull it back. And old Gabby would have kept going. But today I said to my producer, I'm like running on a broken leg. So I left and I gave myself vocal rest. So it's just like, no, I'm not going to push myself anymore.
Yeah. You've done so much. This is to bring us around at the finish line. You've done so much in your life. I mean, to be on with Oprah at 30 and to have written how many books? 10 books, casual. And to have done all the things that you've done, Gabby. What does the future look like for you? What is the perfect ideal of harmony for Gabby Bernstein in the future?
Everything is going exactly as it's planned. I just want to get some harmony in my vocal cords. That's my intention now.
So just in the present. You're just very grounded in the present.
Everything's working out.
Gabby, thank you for everything you've shared. Interviewing you was a dream come true for this fangirl. If you want to follow Gabby at home, you can follow her on Instagram at Gabby Bernstein or head on over to her website, GabbyBernstein.com. And don't forget to check out her Gabby coaching app, which is like having her as your coach in the palm of your hand. Head on over now and take advantage of her free 7-day trial. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology Podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right